Hello, guys. We're just waiting for Sir to join in once, and we'll soon be starting with the session. Thank you for your patience. All right, guys. So, welcome back to yet another engaging session of Aged in Place 2.0. Someone rightly said, one of the keys to being extraordinary is knowing what frameworks to follow and what rules to break. Welcome, everyone. We are back with another exciting session of our insightful placement bootcamp that is Aged in Place 2.0. I am Chavi and I am joined by my co-host Tejasvi today. Today, we have a thrilling start for all of you. We'll kick off with a simple business problem that represents a real world challenge. So, are you guys ready? So, show some enthusiasm in the chat box. What are you expecting from the session today? You can write it in the chat box also. Excited for this. Okay. All right. So, the business problem is, imagine a scenario where a pharmaceutical company's revenue has been declining for several months. Despite various efforts, they haven't been able to pinpoint the root cause. What could be the possible challenge uh, indicating this decline in the revenue? We invite you to put your thinking caps on and share your ideas in the chat box. Competitive market, all right. Guys, come on. There's no right and wrong at this point of time. You are invited to answer whatever comes in your mind. Less marketing, okay? What else, guys? There's a decline in the revenue. You're asked to pinpoint some of the areas where the company might be going wrong. Problem with the distribution channel. Well, that's a very creative answer. Decrease in the quality of the product can be. No strategy plan. All right. It's fascinating to see such different perspective and potential factors contributing to the decline in revenues. We'll keep those ideas coming and we'll continue to discuss such cases throughout the session today. That is decoding cases, cracking the real world challenge with finesse. Decoding cases involves unraveling complex scenarios and analyzing them from various angles to identify the underlying issues and discover the effective solutions. Now let's embark on this exciting journey together as we uncover the finesse required to crack real life cases. Without further ado, let us welcome our esteemed speaker for today, Mr. Mohit Geet. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce our esteemed speaker for today's session, Mr. Mohit. With a stellar professional background as an associate in one of the most renowned firms, McKinsey, Mr. Mohit brings a wealth of experience and expertise to our gathering. Notably, he achieved the remarkable distinction of securing the top rank in his MBA program at the prestigious Indian School of Business. Prior to his MBA, Mr. Mohit graduated from the esteemed Thapar Institute of Engineering and Technology, laying a solid foundation for his success. We are truly honored to have you, sir, share his insights and knowledge with us. And I invite all of you to warmly welcome him to the stage. It is our immense pleasure to have you here, sir, today. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Chavi, for the kind remarks. And very excited to be with the set of participants. Hopefully, I can contribute to something that you will take away from this session, something worthwhile, and that will help you in whatever you want to achieve out of this, right? And what I'm sharing is based out of my own personal experiences. So, I have been in your shoes, trying to prepare for cases and, getting all of this through. So I know what you might be feeling. What are the right resources? How do we really tackle cases? Somebody says something, somebody says something else, right? It's mind-boggling. So hopefully we can clarify some of the doubts around how do you really approach cases. And how we'll proceed is we'll initially see a framework. We'll start with profitability and let's see how far we go. And then I also walk you through a live case demonstration, right? Let's say if you're placed with solving a case, how do you approach it? What are some of the good things to do? What are some of the not so good things to do? And so on and so forth. But before we start, my quick question to you is, why do you think, various organizations have cases in their interview process? Why is it important that you should really know how to crack cases? And I'll take inspiration from Chavi. So like she was inspiring you to put in the chat. So if you have any views around why do you think, decoding cases, mastering this skill is important? Why is that? Structured problem solving, yeah. So I think Mudrika has done a lot of case prep already. She knows all the stuff, why this is important. Thought process, yes. So see, how to design thinking, solve problems. Exactly, right? So see, especially, in consulting and even otherwise, let's say, even in an industrial setup, what you're doing is everyday solving problems, right? And the problems have become much more complex in today's world. And so therefore, if you're going to apply to whatever organization that wants to test you on cases, it's because they really want to see how you think and how you approach problems in a structured way. And why that is important is because that really distinguishes someone who has this knack of looking at problems in a particular way as compared to somebody who approaches them as a layman, right? And why that is important is because once you're more structured into how you're thinking about things, probably you will be able to touch upon all of the different facets of the problem at hand. Probably you'll not miss out certain important things. And therefore, the chances are high that the solution that you come up with is going to be probably one of the better ones, right? And therefore, let's say if you're working in a consulting setup, your client has asked you to come solve a problem. Obviously, it's not going to be a simple one, right? Because if it was that, they would have been able to handle it just by themselves, right? If they're asking a consultant to come in, means that is something which really needs to be unearthed and looked at in a very, very structured and rational manner so that, the best solution can be arrived at, right? So that's why this is important. And that's why, a lot of firms will test you on how you approach cases because they'll get an idea as to once you are in your job, how are you going to approach problems at hand, right? So they'll create an imaginary scenario, probably something they might even be going through in their day-to-day as a problem right now, right? And see how you respond to it, because then they'll be able to get into your head to see how you think, right? So therefore, I would say when you're approaching cases, some broad guidelines initially, right? Before we even jump into frameworks. The first thing is, when you're approaching cases, solving cases with your interviewer, it is a process in which both of you participate, right? So it's not like somebody has provided you a case and now they tell you, okay, now solve it for me, right? And the interviewer shuts up and speaks nothing, right? It's not like that. So it's more of a conversation that needs to happen, right? And therefore, you should really, first of all, understand how to drive that interview, right? What is it that you should present? When is it that you should ask questions? How to involve the interviewer in the conversation? Because a not good way of solving a case is you just doing everything and saying, finally, here is the answer, right? And then at the end, the interviewer says, oh, but you took an assumption. I did not agree with that. And you took that assumption in the very beginning, right? So it's a conversation. At every point in time, you should be checking in with the interviewer, whether what you're thinking through, how you are approaching the problem, does that make sense to the interviewer or not, right? So that's the first thing. The second is, we always talk about structured thinking, right? Now, how to put that into the case prep, right? So you must have heard, I'm sure, about the MECE framework, right? Which is that whatever you talk about, it should be mutually exclusive, but collectively exhaustive, right? So what does that mean? So it means that if you are breaking down a problem into different constituent parts, those constituent parts should be mutually exclusive. Meaning what? There should be no overlap between the two. Now what happens if there's an overlap? If there's an overlap, that means you have not divided the problem really well. Because if you are then trying to go deep down into one of the arms and trying to explore that, you will not be able to, because you have overlapping things between your pieces. And the second is collectively exhaustive. Now, collectively exhaustive is important because if all of the reasons, let's say, that you lay down for a particular problem, if they collectively do not cover everything that you want to cover, probably you're going to miss out on an important consideration, right? So therefore, we say following the MECE framework, right? So now let's go deeper. Let's understand a framework. So let's look at how do you solve profitability type of cases. So you will find these are the ones which are the most commonly asked. So now what I'll do is I will just put up a blank screen so that I can walk you through what we want to do today. Okay, so hope my screen is visible to you. Yeah, all right. So let's get started. So see, what are profitability type cases, right? What are they trying to, find out? What do they want from you in these cases? So the typical setup is they will say, there's XYZ client and the profits of that client have declined let's try to understand why, right? Now, if this is your problem statement, the way you'll approach this in a structured way is, let's see, if your profits have declined, that means either of the two things would have happened. Either your revenue has declined or your cost has gone up, right? So if profits have declined, there cannot be a third reason as to why it could have happened, right? And this is the first leg as to how we have broken up the problem, right? And now, if you relate back to what I was saying around MISI, that's what it is, right? This is mutually exclusive, revenue is different from cost, and collectively exhaustive, right? There's no other metric that probably we will need to understand why the profit might have gone down, right? Now, this is the first leg. So at this point in time, what you should do with your interviewer is ask them, let's see, it could be because of one of these two reasons. Is there a specific reason you want me to deep dive into, right? Do we have any information that whether revenues have suffered for the company or have their costs gone up? And depending on what they say is the arm that you should explore further, right? As of now in the framework, I'll show you everything. But when you're actually solving the case, you only solve for where your interviewer guides you, and so that you're not boiling the ocean, right? So now, let's say if the profits have gone down because of revenue going down, what could be the reason of revenue going down? So now, if you, one way of breaking this down structurally and mathematically is, revenue is what? Average price into the quantity which is sold, right? Now, if revenues have gone down, that means either the average price has gone down or the volume might have gone down, right? And these are completely two different things, right? Mutually exclusive. If the average price has gone down, you could think of multiple reasons as to why that could have happened. Let's say your product mix has changed, right? Let's say you offered 3 products, low price, medium price, high price. And let's say what you're selling in your selling mix, if the percentage of the low price one has increased, that means your average price has gone down. While your volume might still remain the same, the quantity sold might still remain the same, right? And if the volume has gone down, which you will see will be the case actually in most of the problems, right? Average price going down, you will see generally happens to a lesser extent. It's mostly that you're selling less, right? That's always the problem. So now if you're selling less, again, it could be because of 2 broad reasons. One, your market share has gone down. Or secondly, the market size has gone down itself, right? So whatever you're selling, whatever your product is, it is now shrinking, right? So let's say there was an offline or in-person offering that you are offering to your customers, and now people have moved to digital. So what has happened is the market size itself has reduced, right? Now, how could the market size reduce, right? What could be some of the broad reasons of the market size reducing? So see, it could be economic factors, right? How the economy of the country is performing. It could be cyclical factors such as, seasonality effect, right? There are certain products for which they'll sell more in summer, right? Let's say air conditioners, right? Now, in the winters, the market size will go down, right? if there are any substitutes that have come for your product, that could be another reason of the size itself going down, or some change in the buying behavior, right? Like I said, people moving to digital from the in-person thing, right? So those are some things that are affecting the entire market. So now if you see again there, what you can do and what your control is probably not that much, right? Either you like shift the industry you are in, bring out new offerings, etc., etc. But a lot of it is external and not because what might be going wrong with you as an organization, right? If although the market share goes down, that means there's serious problem, right? That the market is still healthy, but your share in that has gone down. Right now, how I would divide this is the market share can go down because of, I would say, three broad factors. So, one, awareness. Second, likability. And the third, accessibility. Right? So let's see what do we mean by each of these. So awareness, right? Awareness is what that people do not even know that your product exists in the market, right? So you can also call it your share of voice in the market. Some of the possible reasons as to why this could happen is your promotional spending going down, right? Did you start spending less on promotions? Second could be your promotional mix changing, right? So now what's this? What are the channels you're using for promotions? What's the content you're using, right? And thirdly, I would say the promotional efficiency, right? So that's what, how does your ad dollars convert into revenue dollars, right? So these could be some of the possible reasons. If you think you're going down this path from what the interviewer is telling you, probably go deeper and analyze some of these, right? If you feel awareness is the problem. Now, second is likability, right? Likability is, do people really like your product, right? Now, this could be because of, again, two broad factors. One, the product itself. Secondly, I will say the service, right? So the likability for the product could be because of reasons like the price at which you're selling, the quality, what's the usage, and services, how skilled is your sales force, how's your customer relation process, etc. Right? And the third is accessibility. So let's say people know what your product is, they're aware, they also like your product, but is it accessible in the market, right? I go out to buy, but there's no product available, right? So now this could be because of issues like your distribution partners, right? Your inventory management, transport, or even your manufacturing, right? Does your supply even meet the demand, right? You're just producing less than how much you really should, right? So this is the revenue side of things, right? Now, another problem could be with the cost, right? That now your costs have gone up, right? And that could be another reason of why your profitability is going down. Now, how to divide cost, right? There are multiple ways in which cost can be divided. One is definitely not better than the other. So I would say here you'll have to really exercise a lot of judgment as to what's happening. But still, if we were to look at one type of segmentation, that could be, see, the first thing could be your COGS, which is cost of goods sold. So what does this mean? This is that what goes into producing the goods, that cost has increased, right? Now, this could be because of multiple reasons. One is direct material. So what has happened is your raw materials have become more costly, right? And therefore your cost of production has gone up. Another one could be direct labor. So labor costs have increased, right? And why do I say labor? Direct labor, because we can directly attach it to the cost of per unit produced. And third, then could be operational overheads, right? So operational overheads, multiple things. So, like the depreciation of your plant, the machinery depreciation, utility cost, right? Electricity, etc., the rent of the manufacturing setup, and so on and so forth, right? Those are your operational overheads, right? Have they increased, right? Now, again, how the interview is flowing, probably you'll deep dive into where you think the problem is, right? Then the second cost would be your SG&A, which is selling, general, and administrative cost, right? So this is the cost that you incur even if you do not produce anything, right? COGS is if you produce more, your costs are going to increase. SG&A is fixed, right? So this is things like you have a fixed number of employees, right? Managers, you have to pay them salaries every month, right? So all of those things are still going to have costs added to your bill. So that's the second. Then it's marketing, which is another very big component, right? Have your marketing costs gone up? And you could explore, different channels that probably you started exploring recently that probably you did not otherwise use. And one more I would say is R&D, right? If it's an R&D intensive product, have you devoted more money into R&D, right? So like pharmaceuticals, like earlier Chavi was saying, pharmaceuticals is an industry which has a very high R&D, right? And there are phases of a product. You build a product, you build a new drug. There's a lot of money that initially goes in. Once you have the patent, then R&D hardly gets affected. That cost just goes out and you can just reap your benefits, right? So I would say this is one way of breaking down the problem. The other way of breaking down costs is you can also look at the entire value chain, I would say, right? So what do you mean by value chain? So your costs are generally incurred in series, right? So how does that happen? So let's say there's initially a raw material that you will be procuring and you'll have cost for that, right? The second then is you will have inbound logistics, right? What does this mean? You will be transporting your raw materials into whatever your factory setup location is, right? Now, once you've done that, you will have a warehouse, for example, wherein you will be storing and you will have all of your inventory costs and related stuff, right? So warehousing, if there is any spoilage here while you're storing anything. And then comes your manufacturing, right? You actually manufacture, let's say, the drugs or whatever it is, right? So manufacturing costs, they could go up for whatever reasons, right? Then it could be, once you've manufactured, you have outbound logistics, right? Now you have a finished product. Now you're sending it to the market. So you will have transportation, etc., all of those things. And then you will have distribution costs, right? So what you produced initially goes to, let's say, the wholesaler, then to the retailer, right? Are you taking care of the entire distribution and has anything changed there? And it is only then that it, finally reaches the customers, right? So this is another segmentation of breaking down the cost. And you'll see here the segmentation that we had done earlier forms a part of it, right? Because let's say manufacturing will include things like your direct material, your direct labor, and things like that, right? So which way you're going to proceed will depend on the context, right? So this is broadly how you would, distribute and structure your entire problem of a profitability case, right? So now let's do one thing. Let's take a look at an actual case so that you get the context of what I'm talking about, right? So let us say that you go to an interview and the interviewer tells you, and you could also do this, parallelly as I'm speaking. I would have loved if I would have done this live with someone, but as of now, I'm just speaking. So you'll have to bear my voice for a little while more. So see, let's say your client is an aerated drinks manufacturer and their profitability has gone down and they are asking for our help as to how can we resolve this, right? Now, this is what your interviewer tells you. So how you'll proceed with this is, initially, the most important thing is you should be asking the right questions. So this initial part is what I call as scoping, right? Scoping down the problem. So you should ask things like, okay, and you should make great use of paper and pen here, right? And even I would suggest showing what you're doing to your interviewer so that they have a better peep into your mind. So you'll ask scoping questions like, okay, this is a problem. So what do you mean by aerated drinks manufacturer, right? So like what products do they have? What do they produce, right? This is something you should definitely ask. Now, let's say when you ask this, the interviewer tells you that they are a cold drinks manufacturer and they manufacture cold drinks. Okay. So then you should further ask, okay, what type of cold drinks? Is it only one product that they have or multiple products do they have, right? So probably your interviewer tells you that they have three types of product: the cola or the black, the orange, and the clear water, right? So generally how we have the three different types of cold drinks, right? So you'll say, okay, this sounds good. Then you will probably ask, okay, their profitability has gone down. What's the timeline of this, right? Has it like recently or like sometime in the past, right? So what's the timeline of this decrease in profitability, right? So they'll say, okay, it has reduced in, let's say, the past 6 months, for example, is what they tell you, right? So you keep on taking notes. Okay, past 6 months. Then you'll say, all right, just to be on the same page, are we talking about India, right? Is this like aerated drinks manufacturer in India? And have we seen this decline of profitability like throughout India, or like where are they even based, right? So then you'll say location, right? So now the interviewer tells you that, so we've seen that our client is a pan-India player and they have seen a decline in profitability in the northern region, right? And they have, let's say, 4 manufacturing plants, north, west, south, and east. But the northern region has seen a decline in profitability. So you'll say, okay, that gives me another insight into what's happening, and therefore I'll be very curious to see if something different has happened in the north region, right? So now see, this is how you already start getting insights if you do a good enough scoping of the problem at hand, right? So take, let's say I would about 3 to 5 minutes. If you have a 30 to 40 minutes of an interview, I would say initially spend 3 to 5 minutes just exploring what the problem is, right? Another thing that you could have asked is, are all these three impacted? Do we see a decline in profitability across all the three products, or only, let's say, cola, only orange, or whatever it is, right? Now, let's say the interview tells you it's across all of these three for us. So you say, okay, so that means probably it has nothing to do with one particular type of drink. It has something to do with what we are doing overall in the northern region. So you say you've already started getting some insights, right? So now you'll say, all right, let's then proceed. And you'll say, see, if your profits have gone down, I can say that probably your revenues have gone down or your costs have gone up. Do we have any insights on what has happened? So now your interviewer tells you, our revenues are fine, man. We are selling whatever we were selling earlier. Our costs have gone up, right? So you'll say, okay, this is something I don't need to touch now. I'll just focus on costs. And now when you're dividing costs, again, you could take, those different approaches. So for this problem at hand, because, this is a typical manufacturing setup, I will follow the value chain approach, right? So I'll say, okay, costs, I can divide as multiple pieces. And so see how you should do it is, now you'll ask the interviewer, okay, can I take a minute or two to really pen down my thoughts and think about the problem, right? And obviously the interviewer say, yes. Now you've taken your time. Now put in all of those pieces of the puzzle and build your MECE structure, right? So now you'll say, okay, if the costs have gone up, raw material costs could have gone up, my inbound logistics costs could have gone up, my manufacturing costs could have gone up, my outbound logistics costs could have gone up, or my distribution costs could have gone up, right? Now you think through this, then you go back to the interviewer and say, okay, this is where I am. I think the problem could be in one of these. And now you see this is MECE, right? So you tell them that this is where I think the problem could lie. Do we have any information around, and you start walking them through. Have the raw material costs gone up? Now, the interviewer could ask you, okay, what do you think are the raw materials in an aerated drinks manufacturing, right? So probably you will say, I'm not very aware, I've not worked here, right? So be very transparent, right? So you can say probably there's some color that they add, right? Then there's water, right? Then there is obviously CO2 gas that comes in, right? And then you'll also say that this is the product, and then there's also packaging which is involved, right? So you'll use something to put the cold drink in, right? So you'll ask them, okay, have my costs of any of these things gone up? Am I spending more than I was on any of these, right? So now your interviewer tells you, right? He gives you the information that our packaging costs have gone up, right? So you'll say, oh, that sounds interesting. Our packaging costs have gone up. So then again, you ask for a little bit of time from them to think and again structure, right? The next step of what might be happening. So now you start thinking about, okay, packaging costs have gone up. So then you clarify with them that, see, you said our revenues have not gone down. They've stayed consistent, but have they gone up? Are we selling more, right? Because if we are selling more, obviously my cost is going to go up, right? I will manufacture more cold drink. I will do more packaging. So my costs are bound to go up, right? So are we selling more, right? So he says, no, we're selling the same that we used to, but still our packaging costs have gone up. So you're like, oh, that's strange. So that means I'm packaging to the same extent that I was packaging earlier, but still my cost has gone up. So now you take a step back and you think, okay, why that could have happened? So probably the price of what you use as packaging might have gone up, or the quantity could have gone up, right? It's just because of these two things. Now you ask them, okay, what do we package in? Now you also show industry knowledge, you also show general knowledge, right? You cannot just blindly take a case framework and solve it, right? So now you know that, see, packaging is involved, and you know that packaging for cold drinks can happen in multiple different ways, right? So you ask them, okay, what do we package in? Do we use glass bottles? Do we use plastic bottles, right? What is it? So he says we use both. Okay. So have our packaging costs gone up in both or any specific one of these? So he says it has gone up in glass bottles, right? So you say, all right. So our packaging cost of glass bottles has gone up. So then you say this could only happen if the price of glass has gone up, right, per bottle that I need to procure, or I'm now packaging more bottles, right? So he says, no, we're procuring the glass bottles at the same rate, and we are packaging the same number of bottles. So like I said, we are selling the same. So I would then say, has our mix changed? You know, are we now using more glass bottles vis-a-vis plastic bottles, so that, let's say, the earlier ratio was 80% plastic, 20% glass. Now it has become 70% plastic and 30% glass. So obviously your quantity of overall cold drinks has remained the same, but what you sell in glass has increased, right? So he says, no, our product mix in terms of packaging hasn't changed. It's still the same. So then you're like, oh my God, this looks like a difficult nut to crack. So then you say, okay, we are packaging the same number of bottles. The price of glass and per bottle is the same, and still our costs have gone up. And it is because of, you know, you're not seeing manufacturing, etc. We're talking about a raw material cost here. So now you'll really have to think hard, and you say, okay, see, glass bottles I can see being utilized in two ways: new glass bottles and reused glass bottles, right? So, you know, for new glass bottles, you'll need to pay much more versus for your glass bottles that went out in the market and probably you collected back and you're reusing them after whatever processes need to be done to make them clean, etc. Right? So now you say, okay, I know the cost of new bottles is high as compared to the reused. Has my mix changed? Am I now, for whatever reasons, right, using more new glass bottles as I was using earlier, and the reused have gone down? So the interviewer says, yes, we're now using more new bottles as compared to earlier in percentage terms, right? So like, oh, this is interesting. There could be two ways there could be two reasons why we are using more new glass bottles. One, it's a call that we've taken for whatever reasons, right? I want to show more quality, right? I want to phase out the older ones sooner, really show I'm a premium product with new bottles, right? Whatever. There could be multiple reasons that I'm using more new bottles now. Or I've not taken this call, but I have to for whatever reasons, right? So we ask them, is this a company call? Have we decided we will use more new glass bottles? Because if we have, then let's explore that. Why have we done that? Is it really helpful, beneficial, or no, right? So he says, no, we're having to use more glass bottles, right? So then you say, oh my God. So that means something is happening to my glass bottles, and therefore I'm not able to reuse them more. So what do? You trace the journey of a glass bottle now, right? So you say, initially, you have your inbound logistics to the glass bottle, right? You procure it from wherever you procure it. You then store it, right? Which is warehousing. Then you use it for manufacturing. So you put the cold drink into the glass bottle. Then you again store it for a little while. And then outbound logistics, it goes out, right? To wherever it is supposed to go, your wholesalers, then finally to retailers. And still see the journey doesn't stop. And this is where you'll need to be very, very careful. So now, once the glass bottles have reached the customer, some of them will return it, some of them will not, right? So then is a return back to your factory. So you'll say, see, this is where I see something could go wrong. So let's explore. Are we facing any issues with inbound logistics? I order 100 glass bottles, only 90 reach me. Let's say they get broken down, right? Or when I am unloading them, they get broken down. Or the quality of glass has reduced such that more breakage is happening. Although they're asking for the same price, they reduce the quality, right? So more breakage is happening, right? So you'll test these out with the interviewer. So you'll say, no. And you'll say, is anything wrong with storing? I am not storing it properly, not stacked up, right? More breakage is happening, more spoilage is happening. Says no. Any issues with manufacturing while I'm putting the cold drink? They're breaking, etc. Right? Says no. What about then again storing? So he says no. Outbound logistics, no. Then he says return, right? So return, he says we are receiving less bottles than we used to receive earlier. And that is why I'm not able to use more recycled bottles, because I'm receiving less. So now you'll say, okay, that's interesting. This could be now because of multiple factors. So see, again, structuring at every step, right? So you say, okay, less return is happening probably because, let's say, customers are not returning, right? They take the bottles home, use it as a flower pot, or whatever it is. They're just not returning or throwing it away, right? So that's one. Or your retailers, they are receiving from the customers, but they are not giving you back. Whatever, they have found better prices probably, right? They are selling it to someone else, selling glass to someone else, whatever reasons, right? Then you say, okay, if this is also not happening, then you will have transportation to your factory, right? Retailers are wanting to give back, but when they give back, they don't reach you, right? So the interviewer says, yes, this is what is happening for us in this part of the value chain, right? Not with the original new bottles, but here we are having issues that transportation is leading to losses. So you say, okay, and I also know that our losses are in the northern region. So what has changed for us in transportation? How do we do transportation, first of all? Do we do it in-house, or do we have a partner, a distribution partner who takes care of transportation? So he says, no, we just know how to manufacture, cold drinks and market it. We are not experts in distribution, transportation, trucks and all of that. We don't know anything of that sort. So we have a partner. So you say, okay, has recently anything changed there? So he tells you, we changed our distribution partner for the northern region and onboarded a new one. You say, okay. Now that could lead to a cause, again due to multiple factors. One is your loading, unloading loss happening, right? Are we able to trace this? Or drivers, right? Are they using drivers who are not really up to the mark, right? And they're driving rashly, so that breakage is happening. Or packaging, right? Packaging of the bottles. So means what? You'll put them into certain crates, into a truck, get them back, right? What sort of packaging material are you using? Did you use that, foam, plastic foam that provides a cushion? Now is the new distributor not using it, right? Or even the route that you're taking, right? Is your new partner, in order to eliminate and avoid toll taxes, they are taking routes which are not like your national highways and state highways, and going on roads which are broken, and therefore more breakage is happening, right? So now the interviewer tells you that, yeah, one of these reasons he will tell, right? You've really nailed down the problem deeply. And let's say they tell you that, yeah, it's a mixture. He's also not using a good packaging, right? The drivers are probably also not as good as they should be. And finally, you have your solution, right? So now you should take a step back, because you've identified the problem. Now you should provide recommendations, right? So what will you say? You will say, okay, we changed our vendor. Why? Right? What was the problem with the initial one? I would say, if there was no problem, let's explore if we can go back to the earlier one. Was there a big issue, right? Because this looks like a big issue. So is going back to the earlier one an option? Then secondly, you will say we can include options such as penalties, right? So whatever breakage happens, all of that, build it into our contract, so that whatever gets broken down, the transporter bears that cost. So he will put his house in order automatically, right? Now, if he says that, yes, packaging also was a problem, right? So you'll say, okay, change that, right? Why don't we use what we were using earlier, etc. And then see, some people will say, can't we do this in-house? Let us ourselves do transportation, right? Now be very cautious while giving suggestions like these, because your suggestion should not be theoretical. They should be really practical, meaning it should be implemented, right? Otherwise, the interviewer will say, do you even think this is possible in the real world? Do they have the expertise to do this, right? So you'll think through all of these, and finally you'll provide your recommendations. You will synthesize the case that, see, so and so is what I heard, so and so is what our client should do, and then thank your interviewer for their time, right? So this is how a typical case would run, right? So hope that was useful. I know we are like almost on time. If anyone has any questions, very happy to take them.
That was very insightful, sir. Thank you for such a detailed explanation of a wonderful case framework. Guys, if you have any questions, we are open to it. So please do not hesitate to ask your questions in the chat box.
Yeah, I'll also say you can connect with me on LinkedIn if there are people who really want to go deep into this, understand, have more questions, even later on want to remain in touch. You have my name on the screen. So also feel free to ping me up on LinkedIn. And if anyone has any questions now, just shoot them. Yeah, it doesn't fit into a particular framework, and that can happen, right? So your interviewer also knows that you have ratified everything that is there, right? All the case frameworks, this and that. See, I will just say, again, bringing you back to where we started. Why are we doing cases, right? It's to see that are you able to think in a structured way, right? So even if it doesn't fall into a framework, as long as you can structurally approach it, right? Start from the top, go into deeper levels, right? Follow the MECE approach, break it down using your knowledge of the industry. It's completely fine. Even I would say when you're using a framework, don't make it explicit that you are completely using a framework, right? You should be bringing in your actual knowledge, and that will really complement the framework that you're using. So framework is actually only a help that you have, right? So don't worry if the case doesn't fall into a framework. And I've myself dealt with a lot of cases that did not fall into a framework, right? So things like, let's say your co-worker doesn't reach office on time, right? Why? So now this is not falling into any framework, and probably some other day we'll discuss. But as long as you're structured, as long as you follow that approach, you should be fine.
Sir, there has been a question from Manav that he asked that for such a detailed case, what should be our approach to solve it?
This to we saw, no? I showed you the entire approach, isn't it? So for a detailed case, go down into the specific arms which you think are the real concerns, because see, you will not be able to do everything, right? You cannot boil the ocean. So from whatever structure you have put in, just see and test with the interviewer where the problem might lie, and therefore you'll only go deep into that area, right? And not the others. So that's how you'll be able to do this within the time limit. Yeah.
So there's another question.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another question from one of the attendees, that what are the best ways to practice frameworks?
Yeah. So see, I would say pick up a good resource, right? And there are multiple, right? So just see whatever is available in publicly. So you'll see a lot of B schools, etc., have their consulting material which is available, right? If that's out there, you could use that. I would say get in touch with people who have really done this, because that's going to be more practical. You'll also see there are a lot of videos, etc., available on the internet, YouTube as well, right? So just make use of whatever is out there, I would say. But just make sure that you're filtering what's of good quality versus what's not, because there would be a lot of things available, and I personally see not everything is up to the standards. Even people who have no idea about how to crack a case are making videos. So just be sure that you're referring to something which is reliable, and I think you should be fine.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for the advice. There's another question, that for a market entry case, what should be the parameters that one should keep in mind?
Yeah. So see, market entry is another type of case, right? We did not get the time to discuss that today. But I would say, see, market entry, mostly you have to understand what's the goal or the objective. Why do you want to enter the market, right? Just be very clear on that. Are there any strategic intentions you have around that? Or are they just purely economic intentions? Right? Then you just see, okay, how's the industry looking like? Is the industry really attractive where you want to go? Right? And then go deeper to analyze all of these, right? So you will have in your mind things like, okay, I want a particular minimum rate of return. If I want to enter a market, will this market be able to provide me that, right? If financial goal is your main goal, right? But there could be also strategic goals. So things like, I just want to expand geographically, right? Increase my footprints. I want to diversify and therefore decrease my risks, right? Right now, I'm just focused on the developed markets. I want to go into the developing markets, right? I also want to do probably, let's say, a vertical integration. I derive certain raw materials from a particular area. Okay, why don't we directly address that area, because our raw materials are coming from there, right? What's the competitive advantage? How is the short term versus long term looking like, right? So I would say all of these considerations would be the key. Obviously, we'll not be able to go in detail because that will require another hour. But mostly, I think if you take care of these, that's what market entry case is all about.
Sir, if someone gets stuck while solving a case in the middle of an interview, what should he or she do?
Yeah.